Hi, everybody. Welcome to this presentation. I'm so happy that you're here in community with us. And I'd like to just introduce myself. My name is Elke Chebets, she, her. I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. I am an educator for Georgetown University at their School of Medicine and School of Nursing. And I am also a clinician in Central Virginia. We see about approximately 3,000 to 3,500 we have patient encounters per year where people will drive multiple miles or we'll get to hit them through telehealth to find an affirming provider that they can afford. So I'm going to talk to you today about my journey and how much of an impact it has made in the hopes that maybe you can replicate it. So the other thing is I'm a WPATH member. I'm also on the committee for the education and certification and mentorship. So if anybody's interested in that too, I'm happy to give you some information about that. And your state is beautiful. So, how do I go forward?
Now you could be able to.
Now I can do it. Okay, perfect. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you so the objectives for, we had a Radiance project that we were given a faculty development monies through a small grant through Georgetown in order to reduce bias, talk about racism, and talking about respect for the our patients. And so I just like to acknowledge that this is the work that we're doing is indebted to the grant monies that we've gotten from the university and what we were able to do. And it's to examine the impact of digital storytelling. And I'm just going to give you the story for that because it's a lot more interesting. There's no conflict of interest I had, just to let you know that this was initially funded by a university. So this all began when I began doing hormone therapy work back in 2014. And we had a small group of an endocrinologist, a teen health clinician from University of Virginia, where I live. And they came to a clinic that was a Ryan White HIV clinic that was expanding out to primary care. And we were going to be serving the transgender community. And I said, I don't know anything about doing hormone therapy. And they said, don't worry, we'll send you to a conference. So I did go to conference and got involved in the community. And I was really astounded when the patients started coming to the door that were traveling for miles and miles just to get care. And it just touched me, but I felt like I didn't really know what they needed. So I started attending support groups for people and learning about what was challenging for them and what was important to them, what they needed to sort of like get to know them a little bit better. And after a couple of times sitting in support groups, I went like, okay, now I feel like I'm voyeuristic. Thank you so much. And so I moved on. So I began the Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. They have a medical schools, medicine and pride group there, and they had invited us to come and speak to them about hormone therapy because that was their focused interest. And we gave them a little presentation about hormone therapy, they wanted to know more because we talked a little bit about more. So they reached out and they said, Elke, can you start to do a panel of speakers for us? We want to learn more. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I grabbed the community of voice trainers, of people who were mental health therapists, a mom, just people that normal people that they might learn from in their stories. And so I invited people to the community and made workshops for them. And this was online. This began during COVID. So, and I thought, well, gosh, I'm doing this for a university that I'm not really affiliated with. I just know the students. I'm going to ask the university where I work at, hey, do you think you might be interested too? And the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion said, absolutely yes. So we began doing speaker series and inviting people in to talk about their stories. And we had a lot of interest from medical faculty, students, staff, residents who all came like during those lunch hours to kind of learn more and grow. And so that's how this all got started. So then once you get started and people know what you're doing, they sort of start inviting you places. And so this is just a story about breaking down silos and how you get started, right? Again, since been doing this work, it's amazing because there's more visibility, right? We never heard about gender affirming care before, at least for me, before 2014, before I started doing it. And I thought it was a thing because I had never been educated in the care, the hormone care, the care of people. And so, but right now, it's really vulnerable time. I can tell you that I was sidetracked. One of my ethics professors that I work with was like, Elke, I have this person from this syndicate who wants to do an interview with you. And I had trusted her because I work with her. And then I got sidelined by somebody who was a very conservative radio show person who was going to probably interview me and take snippets of what I was going to say and then put it out. And so I just want to let you know that healthcare providers are really scared. I'm in Virginia. They're scared to give care. People in Florida, families are moving from different states. I have colleagues of mine who identify that are moving out of the country. They're moving to Mexico, they're moving to Canada. So this is a real thing. Parents are afraid. Parents are gathering together. They're finding community. And so our action today and during this whole entire conference is actually one of advocacy and visibility. But again, with visibility comes vulnerability, right? So you can have, my husband, when I was coming out here, was like, oh my God, you're going to get shot out there, kidnapped, or like he was, because I think we see so much violence on television, but that's actually a real thing. And so I just wanted to just bring that out there, that this is a really vulnerable time for people and people to feel very isolated alone unless they know there's allies out there. So thank you. Again, this is what I usually show. You all know this, that people are being killed and murdered and stalked and raped. I've had patients who've been stalked just hanging out on a Friday as a college student, who've been, tracked and violated. And I hear it all the time from patients when you want to talk about doing a pap smear or doing any kind of prevention, and you hear about the trauma. And so this is a rapidly evolving interdisciplinary field, and the care is not hard. Again, the political implications of the services. I'll tell you another story because obviously I love stories. The students at VCU who actually came and wanted the series, I think that the series touched them so much that when our governor in Virginia said, we're going to stop all care for adolescents and children, even like mental health services, they were like, oh no, hold my beer. They formed a letter within a day, and they reached out to us and they said, hey, can you disseminate this letter? We'd like to send it to the governor. And within one day, I will tell you that mental health providers, physicians, nurse practitioners, social workers all across the state that do this work, they had 1,000 signatures ready to go to send. And he did listen to them, amazingly. The only thing that came of that is that they could not put their affiliation on there. They could only put their name because, as you know, there's repercussions for people regarding state monies and grant monies if you involve the university in there. So that's also a cautionary tale. So the rationale to include authentic voices became because it was sort of that aha moment when a lot of times with our students, they'll be multitasking because our students are online and the medical students sometimes, and this is also during COVID, they would be online, but you can see there's kind of multitasking or they'd be kind of half listening. But when we had the speakers come and talk about their lived experience, I watched their faces. And then when we gave them the evaluations, they were like, the speakers, oh my gosh, I learned so much. I did not know this. I can't believe, how can this be happening? And so we don't have a lot of money in the School of Nursing. So I was like, this is really great. We need to pay our speakers, for them to take the time off of work or show up or tell us their story, but we can't afford to have speakers all the time. So I thought about I reached out to these speakers that I had elicited. They were friends and colleagues and people I've spoken with before. And I said, do you mind if we digitize, if I record your presentation and we can edit it and use it for educational purposes? And we got the IRB involved and they said, absolutely, yes, I want this to go out. I just don't want to end up on YouTube or be stalked. So this is, and so you can see my mantra is from Paulo Freire, talking about you can't expect positive results when you don't include the community. So I always try to at least act like my best friend who's trans is sitting at the table, because your language changes when it doesn't become more, it's otherwise seems to be very sterile. Like, this is what we do for the trans community. But really, when it's your friend involved or your colleagues, the language changes completely. So when I got an initial grant from the Gender Justice Initiative because I wanted to do more work with this, and I met a anthropologist filmmaker named Mariangela Mihai, and she was a fellow at Georgetown with me, and so we were both fellows. And when we got together in a gathering, we started talking about working together. And so Mariangela is the one to kind of help this initiative going for the platform for storytelling, because she's an oral storyteller. Again, this is the historical feedback from the Georgetown School of Medicine students in their Journeys course about how the impact was from hearing people talk about their lived experiences, and is targeted towards healthcare providers and the staff and their lived experience in the healthcare system. Because you can go to YouTube and you can listen to stories, but they're not always healthcare related, right? So why stories? Um, we all get impacted by movies or books we read, and they sit with us and we live with them. But also, through storytelling, we're supposed to feel uncomfortable. We're supposed to be learning and growing, and it's supposed to impact us to where we're a little bit more curious about humanity and things that maybe we didn't know about or we were told. And so this provides a structure to also to digest it on our own time, and to sort of talk about it and maybe form groups and do deep dive live sessions to talk about, how we're feeling, right? And so storytelling is not a new thing in education, right? We use it all the time, but that long-term impact of how storytelling affects people, we don't have that data yet, at least in any kind of health education. So we can't do anything alone, right? You can't do anything alone. So what happened with this grant is we had partners. So the bias reduction team, I reached out to those people, family medicine people that are involved in racial justice issues. I reached out to them. And so we got all together and formed this coalition where we were all members of this Radiance grant, because you can't do anything alone. If you don't have buy-in from your own community, it's really, really difficult. And I know that I've heard some other speakers talk about that. They're the champion, right? But it's so much more meaningful when you find more champions within your community. So what we did is we edited and time-stamped these hour-long initial presentations that people would give. And I had the team go through them and had them listen to it initially, because they had never heard them before. And I said, tell me what you think was impactful for you, and timestamp those things and let me know. And they all gave the feedback of like what things stood out for them. And these were the part of the grant team. And then we had an editing team that just did this for free at the university, and they edited down this video with those timestamps. And then were themes emerging. And so you could see here, and I'm going to do a demonstration for you to show you. I'm going to introduce you to Charlie. So we had initially we started a CME and a CEU asynchronous and synchronous offering, because in Washington, DC, you have to have 2 CMEs per year of LGBTQIA content in order to keep your license. So you have that, again, that buy-in. And within MedStar Hospital, they have about 10,000 employees. We just focused on the Georgetown ones, but within that whole Maryland, Washington, Virginia, we have a lot of employees to impact. We started out with Seth. Seth is a speaker to the left, and you can see that's his little boy right there, and he's a transmasculine person. He's a fantastic speaker, and if you guys want to, his story later, just reach out to me, happy to share. But he talked about his journey. He does a lot of talking about himself, and he talks about the 30,000 level. And he talks about that there's a million ways to be a trans person, right? Everybody has their own story and their journey, just like anybody. And then I hit Charlie, and Charlie's the one that the people, when we did our deep dive, we got the faculty together on 2 different occasions. This past month. We just did it. And we sat together, people were invited. We had a lot of interest from the faculty, from the medical school, the med system, and the School of Nursing, and the midwifery program. And we got together and I talked to them about like why storytelling again. And then they got a chance to listen to Charlie. And again, this was the platform that we used, was within the MedStar thing. It's called Cytal. We had synchronous, so the people could go through, listen to Seth, learn a little bit about, why storytelling, what is bias, why this is important. And we had the targeted audience. And you can see Bell Hooks is also a mantra of mine, and she's an amazing, not with us anymore. She died a couple of years ago, but and then we got together to process what we heard and listen to Charlie and sort of unpack what needed to happen for further steps. Is this a good way to teach our students using this, and what we could do in the future? And so again, this teamwork about, and I'd like to introduce you to Charlie. So Charlie is actually a friend of mine. His birthday is on the 27th. It's in a couple days. He lives in my community, and he's going to tell you, I don't want to tell you too much because he's going to talk about him, a little bit about himself and about his self in the healthcare experience. Okay. It'll pop up. It should pop up.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was on there. And then, does it still have that bar up there?
Can we get it to go? Maybe if they can hear it. Yeah, there it is. Great. Let me know if they can hear it.
From Charlottesville, Virginia. I am one of the founding board members of Black Trans Man Incorporated. I also sit on the board of Seville Pride, on the board of Common Ground Healing Arts, which is a yoga acupuncture studio. And I am also a chair of a board that we recently created called Diversity and Recovery. And diversity and recovery is, I kind of feel like that's my baby, and I talk a lot more about that. We created diversity and recovery back in May and June when all the racial tension was happening. We found people that were in recovery of color and of the LGBTQ community being mishandled is that's the nicest word I can use. So we created our own group for a safe space for everyone to be. So as Elk said, I transitioned about 10 years ago. So I'm 60 years old. I just turned 60 in May. And I transitioned at 50 here in Charlottesville. It was not easy. We can get into that a little later. So the weakest area that I have found thus far in the medical community is the emergency room. And there's a story that I have. Those of you who are free to go to bathrooms, you go to the bathroom and you don't think twice that you might be harmed in a bathroom. For me, I have to strategically place where I go in a bathroom every time I go. I'm hoping that a place is going to have a gender neutral bathroom that I can go in. But if it's a male bathroom, then I've got to think about, oh my God, is there a stall? There or urinals? What do I do here? What if somebody figures out, whatever. And so having said that, I suffered a lot from kidney stones and UTIs from holding my urine too long. Sometimes I would hold it at least 5-6 hours a day before I would be able to find a safe space to go, especially in the work that I was doing when I was traveling up and down the East Coast with my job. So this one particular day, I'm close to home and I'm in excruciating pain. and it's 4:30, and so my doctor's office is closed. And I knew the nearest place that I could go, I probably wouldn't even be able to go to a Med Express because they're going to probably send me to an ER. I knew it was that bad. So I ended up in UVA ER at 4:30 in the evening. And that was probably the worst time to go. I was in the waiting room for about 3 or 4 hours, and they finally put me in what they called a room, was a hallway with a number on the wall. And so I'm in so much pain, they give me something for the pain, and I'm zipping in and out. And I wake up and I feel someone pulling at my clothes. And so I had noticed that there were, EMTs, it's just busy. It's just busy in this hallway. And I wake up and I get around to figuring out what's happening. And I tell this doctor, have you read my record? And she said, I think so, what? And so I said, well, in my record, it should say that I'm transgender and I've not had top surgery yet. So I don't want you to pull my clothes up here. I've got this, so she turns and looks at me and says, what is that? And there's an older nurse who got livid and literally pushed this doctor away and said that she was going to try to find a room. So they found me a room, and then the story gets worse. They are deciding that they need to admit me. So I said, well, if you're going to admit me now, we need to talk about this as well. Because unless you have a private room, I can't go in a room with a man, and I can't go in a room with a woman. There's going to be some problems here. And so to remedy the situation, they admitted me to the ER for the next 32 hours. So for 32 hours, I was in the emergency room. Now, if I had the parts that I wanted when I was born with, I probably would have been put in a room with another guy, and all would have been well. Another problem that I have found is with insurances. I've had to have pap smears. I mean, I do everything to try to keep myself healthy. I do the mammograms, the pap smears. I do everything every year to make sure that I'm in a healthy state. And I just finished fighting my insurance, which I won, but I had been fighting them for the last year because they were saying, this is a male, why is a male having a pap smear? But I don't stop at that because it helps me. I want to know what you're doing for the next trans person that needs help. Okay, so I've got myself together. I know the way to maneuver the system now. But what about this newly trans person who's come through the door? How do we help them? And so having panels like this and having FACLA and having people, allies to rally for us is very important, especially in the healthcare field. I have taken my family through so much when I was a drunk. I'll tell you a funny story to tell you how drunk I used to get. So I'm living in this garage apartment at my mother's house, and I have been drinking moonshine all day and popping Black Beauties and smoking weed. And so it's about 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I have, I guess, at some point passed out. And I wake up and I immediately pick up the phone and I call my sister and I said, there's been an accident. A helicopter has crashed into the house. And so she whisked up her kid and her brother-in-law, and they're coming down the road to my mother's house. And my brother-in-law says, if there was a helicopter that had crashed in this house, don't you think you would see smoke? I'm so drunk, what I thought was a helicopter was a ceiling fan. And so I've taken my family through all this kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to come and sit down and tell you, I'm not a girl, I'm a guy. And I'm going to take some stuff that's going to be shot in my arm. On May 27th, which was actually my birthday, and I remember this, a young man by the name of Tony McDade got on Facebook Live. And he told everyone on Facebook, it was pretty much his manifesto. And he told everybody on Facebook that he had been attacked, he had been beaten, he had just gotten out of jail, he's a trans guy. And he was going after the people who had beaten him. And his hope was that either they kill him or the police kill him. And he got his wish. The police killed him in Florida. And that shook up our organization of Black trans men, because we felt like this was somebody that slipped through our cracks. And this is where we realized that mental health is a very important piece. Maybe before you even put the first bit of tea in your veins or have the first piece of surgery done on your body, that mental health is very important. And so what we have learned with Black Trans Men Incorporated is how we maneuver forward. We need to open our minds up and be able to accept healthcare holistically. And we also need to recognize the stigma of the mental health, A, because of the African-American community who doesn't believe that they need to go seek anything for their mental health. And then B, you've got this whole macho thing that we try to portray, and that we don't need help. At 17, when that psychiatrist told my parents that I had a gender problem and I needed treatment for it, which would have been ECT. First of all, their name, a pronoun, recognizing the pronoun, you know what, you could walk in and see me looking the way that I look, and I'm not a he, I'm a they, so the best thing that you can do is ask permission from that person. How would you like for me? Even if you have to do that to every cisgender person that you walk in, you don't know. You don't know if the most beautiful woman in the world is laying there on the gurney, she might not even recognize herself as a she. She might be a they. So I think it's very important that we ask permission of what pronoun would you like for me to use. And then it's almost like a lot of times when I would go to different doctors and I would tell them that I'm trans, it's almost like this radar kicks up, and then they want to know about my, the sex. Who am I? It's not about sex. It's about me being comfortable in my own. You walk into these doctor's offices and you come in and you see this person. The thing that you need to recognize is that, first of all, you're treating a person, not an object. And second of all, for just those few minutes, I want to know about your world. I want to know about your world because you talking to me might give me some kind of clue on how I need to treat you. So I'm looking here and you keep bouncing in and out of the ER with broken this, broken that. Is somebody breaking your bones? You're bouncing in and out of the ER. Are you breaking them yourself? Do we need to probably help you with some recovery services? Well, let me go look and see who we can get. The thing that I like, that I have always wanted the emergency rooms to do, is almost like what AA does. It's like a sponsor. And so if a person comes in through the emergency room and they're transgender, you've got a list of people who have agreed that if that person needs a trans person there with them to help them through their situation, there's a phone call that you make. And you make that phone call to that trans person and they say, you know what, here's this trans guy and he's all by himself and he wants another trans person to just be there, just to be supported. Maybe that person needs to be the voice where that person haven't found their voice yet. I mean, some people would say, why do they need all the special treatment? Just go to the damn doctor, get your medicine and go home. But we've been mistreated for so long. What is it? 33 trans people have been killed this year. And here we are, almost close time to Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is on the 20th. And so you've got, more trans people have been killed in the United States than ever. I am so indebted to Black Trans Men Incorporated. I could have walked away from them years ago, and did my own thing. Like many trans men will get their transition, they become what we call stealth, and they no longer want people to know that they're even trans. I can't do that. I can't do that for a number of reasons, because I'm not going to hide who I am. I don't need to wear a T on my head but I'm not going to deny and not lie about who I am because I am proud to be a Black trans man. It's just so important to just, all I want is for people to accept me for who I am. You know, I'm not a bad guy. You know, I can be your best friend. I'm a good friend. And I want that. I want what I have right now. If I die today or tomorrow, the last 3 or 4 years of my life have been fantastic. I am at a space in my life that I never thought I would be at. I never thought I'd be alive. The drugs and the alcohol and the crazy life and the suicidal tendencies and thoughts, I just did not realize I was going to be alive at 60 years of age. And so I want other trans people to get to where I'm at. And I don't want them to have to wait to 60 to be able to get there.
Did I lose it? Oops. It wasn't.
Thanks for testing me.
Sorry,
You're
it's
right.
technology. Thank you so much. It's good to also pause after that, isn't it? Just to kind of let it sink in and stuff. So, Charlie did have electroshock therapy when he was younger. So if you heard the word ECT, that's what they did to him. He's also written a book about it himself. It's on Amazon. It's called The Boy Beneath My Skin. And he does speaking gigs too. And he's just a really amazing, he's very self-actualized. I would never grab somebody to speak who is still finding their identity or they're in crisis or something like that. He's just a wonderful person. And he's done a lot of speaking for people to kind of educate the community. So
Yeah, you start at the beginning, but you can like
kind of flip through.
flip
Okay.
through really quick.
Yeah.
Close your eyes,
Well,
she'll go fast.
Yeah. And that was Charlie. Okay. And so just we're still gathering the data on how this impacted our faculty and what they thought about it. But just teaching advocacy has been something that our students have really wanted on so many levels, whether it be racial justice or the social determinants of health. And so we've really dedicated our work at Georgetown to this, as well as in my clinic work. So the positives for this work have been like to break down those silos. I've found out a lot about like who to reach out to do these videos and how much interest there is and how many other people are doing kind of similar work and how this meets, bias reduction, inclusion, and potential for collaborations and inclusion. And so we're hoping to do a longitudinal thread. I have a stepson, an adult stepson who has a severe autism. So we're thinking about like people in geographic areas that don't have healthcare. I live near, not too far away from Appalachia. We're talking about people with disabilities, people who are experiencing homelessness, all those kinds of people. It's really important for our students who may or may not have in their clerkships or their preceptorships the chance to meet somebody, but if they've heard their story, they're going to feel a little bit more comfortable, hopefully, because they've heard the story through digital from somebody who can talk about what's really important to them. So, and hopefully this can lead to things like advocacy or just understanding. Or I have a colleague who is in rural Tennessee. I love her. She's awesome. She said, I don't exactly agree with this, but I'm going to find, if I can't do that care, I'm going to find the care where he could go to. And that's my role, right? And I went, right on, Amy. So, I want to respect people's ability to feel comfortable, what they could do, and just kind of us to love each other, feel very inclusive, and have the resources to where we know where our patients need to go to, so I don't have to go, let me find somebody who's affirming for you. right? I always have to do that. I always have to go, hold on, let me find somebody who's affirming either in mental health or primary care, what it is. And I'm hoping that this new generation of medical students and nurse practitioner students and social workers and everybody, they're all growing up with their friends right now in their high schools and things like that. And so they know people. They don't have to, they're not like us who I don't really know if I know anybody. This is their community. I'm hoping in the future this is just going to be care, right? It's going to be part of our curriculum and we don't have to do anything special. Because right now, LGBTQ care in our medical school is 2 hours. 2 hours, guys. That's the norm across the United States. So we talk about that a lot. So we need to do more. So I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share Charlie's story and to share my journey and to let to find out what you think about the digital stories or what you can do in your community. So thank you.
We do have a few minutes for questions if anyone has a question.
Hi, I work with a beautiful transgender female as a client who's 50 and transitioning right now. And her story is amazing
Mhm.
and long and lots of ups and downs and twists and turns,
Yes.
as you can imagine.
Mhm.
Like, how do I get her your story? And have you?
Oh,
I
if
mean,
she wants to tell her story,
I think she-
absolutely, you have my card. Absolutely
I
happy
think
to
she
do it.
would. No,
We
I
have
think she
some
would.
funding. We're going to include other voices. We didn't have the time or the funding. We didn't have the time to put everybody in there because a Black trans man's experience is not the same as a white trans female experience. I will tell
Yeah.
you. And what I learned from Charlie is that they needed their own space. They needed their own space. They didn't need to be infiltrated by white people. Not that. But I learned that that's important. I had no idea. I just thought you throw everybody together, everybody's gonna do stuff and that'll be great. No, it's because the issues are different. So they need to feel like they have their own space and they can find it online. And so Charlie now has formed a group called Black Trans Men Can Cook, and they're doing a cookbook. And
Oh.
these are guys across the state. And so whenever I see a patient, I'm like, do you know this group? And they're like, no. Tell me about it. Yeah, I'd like to do that. Because when you think about it, the population is so small, 0.05 of people, and when they can find their community, same experiences and things like that is just a wonderful thing. So
Especially older trans people.
yeah,
They just don't.
absolutely.
They just
Especially
they
some
just
of them
don't
will leave
live
their
that
community
long.
that they grew
Yeah.
up in and move away and just have a new life.
Right, they do. And she's Hispanic also.
Yeah.
So she would
Yeah.
have she has,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll
Or
get in
find
touch with
community.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll get in touch with you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I wanted to share too, I'm not plugging a book or anything, but what I do when I talk to patients and sometimes they have family with them too, DM Maynard has on Amazon books that are called Reflective Workbooks for Parents and Families. A reflective workbook for teachers because she's a retired school teacher, and reflective workbook for partners. And I give this a lot because a lot of the things when I open up my visits with my patients, I'll be like, are you surrounded by loving, supportive people? Or like, where are you living right now? A lot of times they've been rejected by their family and they're finding their new family. And so, but sometimes they maybe have one family member who is sort of like wants to do the right thing, but they don't have anywhere to turn to. So PFLAG is great. There's a lot of organizations for family members, and her book is fantastic. She's also talked to our Charlottesville City school system, to the teachers, and got the teachers on board. And so it's been really great. So again, I just want to, I've also put in we did an article called Primary Care for people on gender affirming hormone therapy. There's like tons of lists of resources for you if you want to look at that. So thank you. Yes. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so this kind of a question, but it's from someone online that said, I'd love to hear the results of the poll.
Oh, the poll here or just the poll that we did or that's hard. I had, after we did our thing with the faculty development, I had faculty say, I had people coming up to me saying, I really want you to talk to our residents that are starting, I'm in internal medicine. Can you come? Or can we start incorporating this into the curriculum and things like that? So there is interest. I think it's an inexpensive way, which is, I know a lot of, we're all strapped for budget things, inexpensive and meaningful way to increase empathy, increase engagement, increase the curiosity, and get the knowledge out there, and to have a better understanding for humanity.
All right, thank you.
And I
so-
would love to I'd be happy to talk to that person and get them there. They can just look me up online or something. Yeah, get some data to or partner. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you for.